What if escaping your life didn't actually make you free?
What if the most famous man in the world escaped his father and walked into a bigger cage? That's the story of Michael Jackson. And that's exactly what the movie Michael in 2026 does not want you to think about. You know that feeling when you finally escape something, a controlling parent, a toxic job, a suffocating relationship, and for a moment feel completely free. And then, slowly, almost invisibly, something else moves in. New expectations, new pressures, new people who need you to be a certain way. And you realize you didn't escape the cage. You just got transferred to a bigger one. Hey, I'm Jay Lee, and welcome to Deeper into Film, where we do not just watch movies, we use them as a mirror. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us talk about Michael. Michael 2026 is a big, visually stunning biographical drama. From his childhood in Gray, Indiana, all the way to his rise as the most famous entertainer in history. The performances are incredible. The IMAX concert sequences, the moonwalk, the sequined glove are generally breathtaking. The film follows young Michael growing up under his father, Joe Jackson. And Joe Jackson is not simply a strict parent. He runs his household like a factory. The product? A perfect child performer. Every rehearsal is monitored. Every mistake is punished. Every moment of vulnerability is treated as a defect to be corrected. The system is brutal, and the system works. It produces something almost supernatural. The film then follows Michael as he breaks away, slowly, painfully, at real personal cost. He creates thriller, bad. He becomes a global phenomenon. And then, in the climactic sequence, he stands alone on a London stage. No father, no shadow, just Michael. And then film says, he did it, he is free. And then the film ends, credits. Walking out of that IMAX theater, I had one thought I could not shake. This film ends exactly where the real story begins. Let us go deeper. Because understanding the first cage is the only way to understand why the second one is so inescapable. Imagine being 5 years old and your entire value as a human being is conditional on perfection. Not try your best, perfection. The psychologist Carl Rogers called this conditional positive regard. Love and approval only available when you deliver the right output. What does that do to a developing child? It creates someone extraordinarily skilled at reading what others want and giving it to them. But it prevents something essential from ever forming, a stable, internal sense of self. You do not develop a voice. You develop an instrument. Buddhism has a concept for this. Anatta, non-self. The self is not a fixed object, but a flowing, ever-changing process, like a river always moving. What Joe Jackson's system did was freeze that river. It said, you're this, you're a performer, stay here. And once your identity gets frozen at a single point, the Buddhist insight is devastating. What you think you are protecting is not even real. You are clinging to a concept. And then there is Catherine, his mother. The film captures something true here. Catherine was the one person in Michael's early life who did not need him to hit the note. She just saw him, not the performer, the child. In a world defined entirely by evaluation, that unconditional presence was the only air he could breathe. But love, even deep and genuine love, cannot always undo what a system installs early enough and deep enough. Michael carried the cage his father built into every stadium, every recording session, every relationship for the rest of his life. Now, here's where the film gets genuinely fascinating and also genuinely cowardly. When you listen to Billie Jean, really listen, it does not sound like a performance. It sounds like a confession. Yes, a man who found just for a moment the gap between what the world demanded and what he actually had to say. And that gap, that is exactly where genius lives. But here's what the world did with that confession. It said, do that again, exactly like that, every night, forever. And just like that, expression became expectation. Expectation became identity, and identity became a new cage. Except this cage was not built by one controlling man in Gary, Indiana. This cage was built by 300 million people who needed Michael Jackson to stay exactly as he was, unchanged, perfect, repeatable, eternal. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, collapsing yourself so completely into a role that you forget you ever had a choice. Michael fought his entire life to escape his father's definition of him and walked directly into the world's definition of him. One controlling father became 300 million controlling strangers. The cage got bigger, the locks got heavier. The Tao Te Ching says, what is rigid breaks, what is flexible survives. Think about water. It does not perform being water. It finds the natural path and moves. Michael Jackson, at his greatest, was water, fluid, alive, impossible to define. But the world needed him to be a statue, perfect, frozen, timeless, and statues cannot breathe. Now, I have to be honest about what this film definitely chooses not to show, because this is exactly where most reviews go very quiet. I'm not gonna do that. The film gives us what looks like a real stage, Wembley Stadium in London, but it also becomes something more than a concert location. It becomes the symbolic stage of global fame itself, the massive crowd, the lights, the roar. Everything about it feels like the peak of Michael Jackson's triumph. On the surface, it looks like freedom. No father standing over him, no direct control, no one visibly telling him what to do. Just Michael owning the stage. But underneath, something else is happening. The cage has not disappeared. It has only become invisible. The control is no longer coming from one man behind the scenes. It is coming from millions of people in front of the stage, all expecting him to remain exactly who they need him to be. And that is what makes this moment so powerful and so unsettling, because the film almost entirely skips what came after, and that changes everything. So let me tell you what the second stage actually looked like. In 1993, first accusations of child sexual abuse surfaced. The case was settled out of court. Yes, surely. No criminal charges were filed, but the damage to his public image was catastrophic and permanent. In 2003, a documentary showed Michael describing sharing his bedroom with children, which helped trigger the investigation that led to a criminal trial. He was acquitted on all counts. But 14 months of relentless public humiliation broke something in him that never fully healed. And whether people see him as innocent, guilty, tragic, strange, exploited, or impossible to understand, one thing is clear. The stage that once looked like freedom had become another kind of prison. The father's cage was gone, but the world's cage had arrived. After the acquittal, he left the United States, living in exile, increasingly isolated, increasingly dependent on prescription medications just to function. The Neverland Ranch, his attempt to recreate the childhood he never had, was eventually lost. And in 2009, at age 50, while rehearsing for a comeback concert series in London, Michael Jackson died of acute propofol intoxication administered by his personal physician, who was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Yeah, that's what happened. The film shows almost none of this. It gives you a montage, a hint, and then it moves on. Here's the extraordinary irony. In trying to protect Michael Jackson's image, this film does exactly what the world always did to him. It makes him spectacular. It keeps him unknowable. It preserves the icon and buries the person underneath. The film itself becomes the part of the second cage. I hope the sequel would reveal those to recover his honor again. So what does this film, despite all these limitations, actually teach us about freedom? The film ends with Michael on a massive Wembley stage during the bad era, BAD. Tens of thousands of fans, the whole world watching. Same role, same roar, same function. And a lesser analysis would say, he made it. He is free. But the question worth sitting with this, is he really free or is he performing freedom? Because those are not the same thing. Zen Buddhism has a famous saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The action is identical. What changes is the relationship to the action. Are you doing it because the cage requires it, or from a place of genuine chosen aliveness? The difference between those two states is completely invincible from the outside, which is precisely why it is so easy to mistake one for the other. Sartre said we are condemned to be free, meaning we always have a choice. Yes, but what he did not fully account for is what happens when the identity that prisons you was installed before you were old enough to choose. Michael Jackson did not choose to be Michael Jackson. It was chosen for him at age 5 by a system that needed him to be extraordinary and did not much care what it cost. And now, I want to bring this back to you. You have a role too. Maybe it is the reliable one, the successful one, the strong one, the person everyone calls when things fall apart. And you are good at it. People in your life have organized their expectations around it. And there is a gap, maybe small right now, maybe quietly growing between that role and the person who exists when no one is watching. Most of us manage that gap by staying busy, by performing so consistently that we never stop to ask the question Michael Jackson could never quite answer. Which one is actually me? The role or the person underneath it? Michael Jackson spent 50 years of performing. He was extraordinary at it. But somewhere underneath all of it, underneath the sequence and the moonwalk and the mythology, there was a 5-year-old boy from Gary, Indiana, who just wanted to know if he was allowed to be something other than perfect. That boy never really got an answer. The system is whether you will give yourself one. Here's the question I want to leave you today. Write your answer in the comments because I'm curious, and I read every single one. Did you choose the role that defines you right now, or did it slowly choose you? Because Michael Jackson never got to choose. The role chose him before he was old enough to know what a role even was. The question for the rest of us is whether we are any different or whether we are just living inside cages we have learned to decorate really well. I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film, where film begins a lens for understanding your own life, drawing on philosophy from East and West, psychology, existentialism, and postmodern philosophy, art, and so on. And I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching.